There are people in the world whose names become synonymous with the future. Steve Jobs, Henry Ford, Thomas Edison. In the 21st century, Elon Musk has undoubtedly entered this pantheon, a man who decided it was time for humanity to become a multi-planetary species and for cars to stop burning fuel. His name is constantly in the headlines, his tweets move markets, and his ambitions seem limitless. But behind the image of the eccentric billionaire lies stories of incredible risk, desperate struggle, and an almost insane faith in his goals. Today, we will tell 3 stories that reveal not just a businessman, but a man ready to bet everything he has. These are stories about what happened behind the scenes when the cameras were off and success was just a few steps away or millimeters from complete failure. Imagine the year 2008. The world is plunging into one of the greatest financial crises in history. Banks are collapsing, markets are in a freefall, and the word startup elicits nothing but a bitter smirk from investors. It is at this exact moment that Elon Musk is trying to do 2 of the most difficult things imaginable: build private rockets and produce electric cars. To the rest of the world, he is a Silicon Valley upstart who, after selling his stake in PayPal, decided to play with expensive toys. The press calls him a failed millionaire. His personal life is also falling apart. He is going through a difficult divorce. On his shoulders, there is debt. On his face, fatigue. And in his future, only fog. His space company, SpaceX, had already made 3 attempts to launch the Falcon 1 rocket. 3 times, a team of young, passionate engineers gathered on a remote island in the Pacific Ocean. 3 times, they watched the launch with bated breath. And 3 times, their hopes turned into a fireball in the sky. After the 3rd failure in August 2008, despair reigned in the team. Employees cried right there in the Mission Control Center. Musk had only enough money for one last launch, a 4th one. The chances of success were slim. Simultaneously, his car company, Tesla, was going through its own hell. The first electric car, the Roadster, turned out to be incredibly expensive to produce. The company was losing money on every car sold. Investors were furious. Production was constantly halting, and critics in blogs and newspapers mockingly called Tesla the Franken-Tesla, a monster stitched together from good intentions and burning cash. By the fall of 2008, Musk faced a choice that would have broken anyone. His fortune, once seemingly vast, had run out. He had about $40 million left, enough to save one of the companies while letting the other die. All his advisors, friends, and investors told him in unison, choose one, save at least something. But to Musk, SpaceX and Tesla were like his 2 children. To give up one so the other could survive? He couldn't, and he made a decision that the financial world would consider madness. He bet everything. He split the last of his money between his 2 sinking ships. September 28, 2008, the 4th launch of the Falcon 1. There is dead silence in the Mission Control Center. This wasn't just a launch. It was the moment of truth. The rocket lifts off the ground. The first stage performs flawlessly, the second, and then, after several excruciating minutes, a message appears on the screen. Rocket has reached orbit. The room erupts with emotion. Shouts, applause, tears of joy. SpaceX had become the first private company in history to put an object into Earth's orbit. But that was only half the battle. Tesla was still dying. Musk flew across the country, begging investors to give him one more chance. He used all his eloquence, showed them SpaceX's success, and argued that the future was in electric cars. The final round of negotiations took place on Christmas Eve. Bankruptcy was hours away. At the last minute, when hope was almost gone, the investors agreed. Tesla was saved. A few days later, news came that changed everything. NASA, impressed by the success of Falcon 1, awarded SpaceX a $1.6 billion contract to deliver cargo to the International Space Station. In 1 week, during the darkest hour of the global crisis, Elon Musk walked a knife's edge and pulled both of his dreams back from the abyss. He was ready to lose everything, and that is precisely why, in the end, he won. But how did a man with no formal education in the field even decide he could build rockets? This story began not in California, but in cold Moscow in the early 2000s. Musk, young and not yet so famous, flew to Russia with the idea of buying decommissioned intercontinental ballistic missiles to send a greenhouse with plants to Mars. He wanted to inspire humanity to revive interest in space. He met with Russian officials and engineers. The negotiations were tough, filled with endless vodka toasts. The Russian side looked at the young American with unconcealed skepticism. According to one legend, during another meeting, one of the chief Russian designers, after hearing Musk's ideas, simply spat on his shoes. Perhaps it's just a story, but it accurately conveys the atmosphere of contempt he faced. They turned him down. Musk flew back to the U.S., annoyed and humiliated. Looking out the airplane window at the clouds, he thought, "These people think rocketry is some kind of magic, accessible only to them." And at that moment, something clicked in his head. He opened his laptop and created a simple spreadsheet. In one column, the components of a rocket: aluminum, titanium, fuel, avionics. In the other, their market cost. He started calculating, and the calculations showed something astounding. The cost of raw materials was only about 2% of the final price of a rocket. The other 98% was markups of brand, inefficient manufacturing, and the bureaucracy of aerospace giants like Boeing and Lockheed Martin. This was his eureka moment. He realized he could build a rocket himself, from scratch, for much cheaper. But to do that, he had to become a rocket engineer. And so he began to study. He locked himself away with fundamental textbooks that most students avoid: aerothermodynamics of gas turbine and rocket propulsion, fundamentals of astrodynamics, rocket propulsion elements. He read late into the night, but just reading wasn't enough for him. His method was different. He would find a concept in a book that he didn't fully understand, pick up the phone, and call the best expert in that field he could find. One of those people was Tom Mueller, a legendary engine designer. Musk would call him at any time of day or night and literally grill him for hours. Why does the engine nozzle have this shape? What if we use a different alloy? Why is the pressure in the combustion chamber exactly this? He wouldn't rest until he understood the physical fundamentals, the first principles of every decision. He turned his company into a university. He hired the best and then absorbed their knowledge. He wasn't a boss who gave orders. He was the most meticulous student in the room. And it was this approach, breaking down any problem to its fundamental axioms and building a solution from the ground up, that allowed him to create the Merlin engine and the Falcon 9 rocket, which turned the entire space industry upside down. Let's fast forward to 2018. Tesla had made a bold promise to release the Model 3, the first truly mass-market and affordable electric car. Hundreds of thousands of people around the world had put down deposits. At stake was not just the future of the company, but the very idea of an electric revolution. And Tesla was spectacularly failing to deliver on that promise. Musk wanted to create not just an assembly line, but the machine that builds a machine, a fully automated factory of the future. But reality proved cruel. The robots, which were supposed to perform the most complex operations, couldn't handle the simplest tasks, like installing seats or connecting wires. Production had hit a wall. Musk himself called this period production hell. And then he did what no other CEO would do. He literally moved into the factory. His workspace became not a luxurious office, but a couch next to the most problematic section of the assembly line. When there was no couch, he would simply unroll a sleeping bag on the floor. He worked 22 hours a day. His day began with a walk along the assembly line. He would approach the workers, the engineers, and ask the same question: what is preventing us from working faster? He didn't listen to managers' reports. He looked at the problem with his own eyes. He might notice that a certain bolt was too difficult to tighten, and immediately redesigned the part on his laptop. He personally rewrote the code for the robots that were acting dumb. For the employees, this was a shock. Imagine you're working the night shift, tired and dejected, and you see the CEO of your multi-billion-dollar company sleeping on the floor next to you, and then getting up to go fix the assembly line. It changed everything. It turned despair into a sense of unity. If the CEO was willing to do this, then they couldn't give up either. The culmination of this madness was a decision that showed the very essence of Musk's approach. Realizing that his dream of a fully automated factory had failed, He ordered a giant tent to be erected next to the factory. In this tent, in a matter of weeks, workers manually built a new assembly line. It was an admission of failure, but at the same time, a brilliant, fast, and audacious solution. And it worked. This hellish period forged Tesla. The company learned how to solve impossible problems. And Elon Musk once again proved that for him, there is no difference between the CEO's chair and the factory floor if his dream is on the line, risking his entire fortune, teaching himself the most complex sciences, living at the factory to save production. These stories are not just anecdotes for business magazines. They are the three pillars on which Elon Musk's philosophy rests: absolute faith in the goal, a fundamental understanding of the problem, and a willingness to make personal sacrifices that would seem insane to any rational person. And perhaps this is the very secret to how one man is changing our world right before our eyes.